Good morning, America, and welcome to this morning's Huddle, brought to you by Going on Offense. My name is Daryl Moon, and it'll be my pleasure to be your host today. Thank you for being with us, and we hope that you will join the conversation today as we talk with a couple of our guest panelists about the importance of safely acknowledging our feelings during these unprecedented times. We hope that you will participate and share your thoughts with us today. We're holding these huddles every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in an effort to both be supportive to those who are struggling, but also to brainstorm and work together to share and create strategies to inject hope and optimism where there may be doubt and despair. I do want to remind our listeners that this is not a forum to vent, to criticize, or complain. Let's keep the huddle proactive and positive in a positive direction. There are four primary purposes of these huddles: to support those struggling, to brainstorm strategies to help, to promote resources, and to engage collaboration. Now, to introduce today's guests, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Amber Landsman, who graduated with her MSc from University of Akron in exercise physiology. And she is a health coach, a wellness program coordinator, and freelance writer. I'm also honored to introduce today Salvatore di Liello, ND, who is a board certified naturopathic doctor and recovery nutrition coach by the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. I'm going to invite each of them to take about 4 or 5 minutes to introduce themselves and share a comment or two about the topic today of acknowledging our feelings. But before I do, I want to invite all of you to participate in today's conversation. If you're willing to share your thoughts and insights, just raise your hand on the control box and I will turn on your audio so we can hear you. Amber, would you like to go first, and then Dr. Salvatore, Sal?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Daryl. Thanks for having me and inviting me on today. As Daryl said, I'm Amber Landsman. I live here in Northeast Ohio, and I work primarily as a corporate wellness coach. I also, on top of health coaching, I do some wellness program management within a couple different organizations locally here. And I do some freelance writing, mainly on the topic of women's health and hormones and ways of basically transitioning into perimenopause and menopause with more ease and less stress, and not maybe like our mothers once did. So I am pretty busy, but I have always had an interest in motion regulation, mindfulness. Since I was a young girl, I struggled with my own feelings, and I feel like no harsh offense to my parents, but I feel like I really wasn't encouraged to delve deeper into my emotions socially also, and learn any skills to be able to manage them. So I went to college and I got my undergraduate in psychology because I was interested in behavior and our reactions and how some people are better able to handle different situations and react in different ways, maybe that are more positive. And I was really curious about how people responded to different situations that were being experienced. So then I went on through a couple years more in my life, and I decided I was diagnosed with cancer in my late 20s, and I decided I was going to go back to school, and I wanted to learn more about the human body. So I got my master's in exercise physiology and had an emphasis in, again, wellness. And I knew that I wanted to go out and help work with people one-on-one, which is why I ultimately have found myself as a health coach, is because I wanted to provide people with support, strategies, education of ways that they could better take care of themselves mentally, physically, spiritually. And that's where I am today. And I wanted to share about this topic, like I said, because I have a deep desire and passion to learn about it myself. And now I want to be able to help my clients and others in our community, especially coming out of this pandemic. Hopefully over the next couple months, we'll we'll be able to say we're on the other side, but we're also going to have, I believe, somewhat of this chaotic situation in the sense of how we're supposed to deal with all the newness that we're experiencing, all the changes that we're going through.
Nice. Sal, what are your thoughts? Or introduce yourself and share your thoughts.
Sure. Good morning. And first of all, thank you there for inviting me. And also thank you, Amper, for taking along on the invitation. Appreciate that. Obviously, from my accent, you can tell I'm not from Northeastern Ohio, although this is where I live now. I was born and raised in Naples, Italy. And Italy, as you know, is probably been one of the foremost country right now in the news because of this pandemic that it's been going on. But when I moved here, I was already not a stranger to some of those natural cures that I was brought up with. And as you mentioned, I'm a naturopathic doctor, board certified. I also several years ago started a program in the Youngstown area for addiction recovery, taking more of a holistic approach because I always felt and was brought up in a sense that there is more than just our body. You know, our emotion play a big role in who we are and our behavior, our thoughts and how the thoughts shapes our behavior. So I've always had an interest in those type of going beyond the physical aspect of our body. And it, you know, and so I was born and raised with that. So I thought was just good for me to keep pursuing what came from my roots, and I felt now the responsibility to start practicing and giving this back to the whoever is open and willing to approach this, you know, from this new methodology. I'm also an homeopath. For those of you that are familiar with homeopathic medicine, and a Reiki teacher and master. And about 10 years ago or so, I started doing more of mindfulness meditation in stress relaxations techniques. So I think in situations like we are having right now, this is probably a good opportunity to start with the, you know, how these feelings and how everything that has been going on has been affecting us here today. It's not a coincidence that in Japanese, the Japanese character for crisis or danger, it happens to be the same as opportunity. So I like to take this as an opportunity to shine and make ourselves stronger and better through this crisis.
Very good. Let's start the huddle today by inviting attendees to share their thoughts. I've got a few poll questions that I'd like to launch, and I'll do that right now. The first question is, give us an idea as to why you're participating. Is it for help with your own struggles? Is it to help others, family, friends, and coworkers, or a little bit of both? So if you'll take a minute on your control panel to share your thoughts, we would appreciate it. All right, it looks like people have concluded that, so I'm going to stop, close that huddle, and share it so everyone can see it. As you can see, it looks like the majority of our participants today are participating to help others, family, friends, and coworkers, and about 33% are participating for both. I'm going to launch another poll and ask the question, how would you rate your own mood today? So I'm going to launch that. Take a minute and give us your thoughts as to whether your emotions are unpleasant, high energy, angry, unpleasant, low energy, sadness, pleasant with high energy, elated, excited, or pleasant, low energy, tranquil, serene. So take a minute and share with us kind of how you're feeling today as a group. Things are coming in kind of even right now. It looks like people have completed that, so I'm going to go ahead and close it. If you haven't had a chance, do so. I'm going to close that and share it so everyone can see. As you can see, it looks like there are a few who are feeling kind of angry, not many that are in the low energy unpleasant, and then a few that are in the high energy, and most people are in kind of that low energy, pleasant, tranquil, serene category. All right, and let's do one more poll. How well are you managing your emotions during this COVID-19 crisis? So give us your thoughts on whether you feel like it's well, somewhat well, poorly, very poorly. Give us your thoughts as to how you feel like you personally are managing right now. Okay, it looks like people have stopped. And so I'm going to share that. And it looks like most people are doing pretty well. 40% well, 40% somewhat well, and 20% poorly. Nobody's in the very poorly in both categories. So let's start off. Let me remind everyone that we would love for you to participate and join the conversation. Just simply raise your hand on your control panel and I'll turn on your audio. But let's take those poll responses and let's start with Amber. I'll start with you and then Sal. Why is it important to have a plan or a strategy to deal with our emotions? Amber,
Well, for several, yeah, thank you. For several reasons, having a strategy or plan for most of us is going to allow us to become increasingly self-aware of our emotions. Having a plan will also allow us to become aware of the triggers of body sensations, maybe that certain emotions are giving us, some of our habits from the past. When emotions come up, we can recognize how we habitually respond to certain emotions. And ultimately, having a plan can help us intervene with our reactions that then dictate the next couple of actions, which kind of flow out from that initial reaction. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say in general is having a plan specifically during this type of situation we're all going through right now is it helps us better confront this kind of difficult, chaotic situation with more order in our lives and saves us from hopefully some trouble if we're better able to deal with some of the emotions that we have and even that others have. And finally, I'd like to say that I think not having a plan reminds me of a Jordan Peterson quote about not addressing and paying attention and becoming self-aware and then recognizing what we can do with our emotions and communicating them. An author named Jordan Peterson, he says that if we don't deal with our emotions, they become like a baby dragon underneath the bed that we keep feeding crumbs to every day. So those feelings are our crumbs and we keep feeding that baby dragon. And then one day that baby dragon's grown up to be a big, strong, large adult dragon and it comes right out and devours us. So it's really important to saving us from having, the long-term negative effects that can go on in relationships and with our ability to accomplish things and make decisions and at work and school, to have a plan and strategy to address our emotions.
Thanks. Sal, what are your thoughts around the idea of having a plan?
I think now more than ever, a plan is really needed for keeping us our sanity, so to speak, because we get bombarded between the media, the social media, everything else, our friends, and that of all the different things that are happening in the world and all the different things that are happening in our own hometown and in our own family and our own circle of friends. So and we, until a couple months ago, we were already into a sort of a structure because we got up in the morning, we had our routine where we would follow certain things. So getting a shower, getting a breakfast, going to the office, or whatever your routine might be. So anytime that there is a disruption of our normal routine, it just throws a monkey wrench into our body, into our mind, into our emotion, and it gives us those feeling of being unease. So, and to me, the unease is sort of translating to dis-ease, because if you're not in balance, if you're not in harmony with yourself, with your environment, it's easy just to go ahead and fall into that unease that eventually is also going to lower your immune system, is also going to give you different thoughts and emotions that come up. And I like the idea that Amber mentioned about the little dragon. If you keep feeding that, then obviously this is going to grow up into a much bigger monster. So it is good to have a plan. It is good to also see that being creature of habits that we are, we know that the more that we do something, the more our brain will respond and support to that activity. So we have a choice when basically we get out of bed and it's like, okay, what are we going to do today? How are we going to planet that, throughout this crisis, what opportunity can we find to go ahead and keep us more into the positive atmosphere. And we also know, one of the quote that I like is that the neurons that fire together, they're wired together. So it is essential and it is good to come up with a plan so we can keep ourselves in balance. And at the same time, throughout the day, just check and see where are you on this plan. It's easy now that we have a little bit extra time, for those of us that have extra time, to say, okay, I'm just going to go back to this later on. And before you know, you start getting behind your homework, your assignments, other routine, because we are off the routine. So having a plan, it keeps us, I think, sane physically and mentally.
Nice. Amber, here's a question. What does emotional self-control enable us to do, or how does it benefit us? And explain, if you would, what that means to you to have emotional self-control.
So I'll explain first what I think that I practice to have emotional self-control. It's getting off of autopilot. Sal described a little bit of it toward the end of his last few words there about turning off my autopilot reactions. If I don't purposely stop when I start to feel emotions and feelings, usually the ones that are more uncomfortable and difficult, then I will ultimately have a reaction or response which may be destructive and not in the direction of making anything better for me or others in my life. So that's why I think that's how I use an emotional, like, self-control technique. It just gives you that pause between the impulse or the stimulus out in the environment that's causing you to have those emotions and my ability to create a different type of response. But it does benefit all of us in general. It affects our health, as Sal also said. I mean, people that have more capability of regulating their emotions tend to experience less stress and less anxiety. They actually have lower BMIs, body mass index. They have less risk for all chronic disease. You'll notice that people that have chronic disease often are paired with some form of mental health illness also, not in every case, but that's seen together. Emotional self-control benefits us cognitively. I know for me, when I was in high school, I was bullied for a period of time where people spit on me, threw me in trash cans, and I was afraid to go in between classes. And my ability to think clearly and stay focused during school and perform as well as I probably could have was definitely affected by my emotions in class. I wasn't able to focus and perform as well because of the fear and the anxiety that I had around being bullied. So your cognitive function is affected, our ability to make decisions. They show that people that can better control their emotions, specifically young people, are less likely to use drugs and alcohol. And I would include food in that, because I personally know that emotionally I will turn to food. So if I am dealing with my emotions, then I'm less likely to find it as appealing and also have that pause so that I actually think before I act out on eating something. Also, I feel like we're less likely to give up on ourselves when we can control our emotions. I use a lot of student analogies because, well, my husband's a professor, but I was talking to him recently about how many students, he's advising students right now, remotely of course, but how many students won't follow a career path or will quit college if they will begin to think that they're failing in a certain class, or they'll change their majors or give up on themselves quickly if that anxiety and that stress builds up. So that's another thing that's just kind of interesting. But finally, I guess I would say that I think we're better listeners and we're better able to be empathetic toward others and deal with others and improve our own relationships with coworkers and people at home and friends when we're better able to control our emotions.
Incredible points. Sal, what are your thoughts about this idea of emotional self-control?
Well, let me start by saying how I personally use it, and I can see that we all have our monkey mind, where like I call it during some of my meditations sessions, that it's easy to have thoughts that drive us all over, and every thought is usually accompanied by an emotion, by a feeling. And then we know that every of these emotions eventually is going to create a specific biochemical reactions in our body, as Amber was also mentioning. So by controlling that, by getting into our emotions, we obviously can help ourselves and can help others. So one of the other things that I usually like to distinguish is that when we are thinking of emotions, when we're thinking of some of the feelings, is the ability to actually separate ourselves from those emotions. And let me give you an example. I often hear people say, coming in my office, that say, I'm depressed, or I'm anxious, or I'm sad. And they are attaching themselves to that emotion or to the feeling. So eventually what they're doing is they're becoming that emotion. What really would have been a better way, I think I found it helpful for me, is to be able to say, I feel sad or I feel depressed rather than I am. Because once you attach yourself to one of these emotions, there is a pathway that goes on in our brain, in our adrenal glands, in our sympathetic system, that just fires up, and now it starts to get us into the rabbit hole of other thoughts, other behavior that come out. And eventually, we do know that these emotions that do carry a physiological influence on our body, and then eventually it's gonna change our behavior. And also we have seen, even with pets and with children, the way we handle our emotion, it reflects not only ourselves, but it mirrors with other partners and other people. When we are feeling stressed out and we project that, other people are more likely to respond into the same fashion that the way we are feeling. So I think it's important to do a self-check, and I usually take several times throughout the day where I just take deep breath and check and see where am I with these emotions? Where am I with these feelings? And are they true my feeling, or is it something that I'm adopting from someone else that I came across that day? So also being able to separate what's truly yours versus what are you adopting, to me makes a gigantic difference.
Thank you, Sal. I'd be curious to know how you help other people to control their emotions, either through your meditation trainings or engaging the relaxation response. What are some things that you do to help people? And then Amber, I'd love to hear from you as well.
Sure. So one of the easiest thing, and this is a tool that we all have, and it doesn't require any special training other than practice, is using our breath. It's one of those things that we know that once we start making an exhalations just a little bit longer than inhalation, we're starting to engage the parasympathetic system in our bodies. So imagine having the sympathetic system, the fight flight, being your accelerator on your car, and imagine using the parasympathetic having your brake pedal on your car. Obviously, you won't be able to live much longer if your foot is on your accelerator all the time, because sooner or later you need to slow down, you need to apply your brakes. So that's one of the techniques that I like to use. And the other things that I often encourage, and I do it myself, is just to do a quick body scan, just to do a self-check. Where am I feeling these emotions? So what is being representing? Maybe it might be a knot in my stomach, it might be a pain on my neck and my shoulders, different things that take more of a somatic aspect from the psychological, from the emotional part in our bodies. So getting in touch with those emotions, getting in touch with those feelings, and see where they are in our body, how they're affecting us, how we're feeling it, and then shifting our energy towards them and give it some breath work, give it some energy, and give it some attention in order to be more mindful. Then I think it helps bring it up to the surface. Often we, through a busy time, through a busy day, we ignore some of these emotions, and I love that paradigm of going back to that little dragon and big monster. So if you keep ignoring them, eventually they're going to come up to the surface. So be in touch with them, acknowledge them. You know, they are not always going to be fun and positive, but rather than judge them, acknowledge them and work with them. So, and I think eventually that's how I'm able to bring them to the surface, and rather than keeping suppressing them.
Okay. Amber, how do you help people?
Well, as a health coach, right now I am spending about 75% of my coaching time in some way helping others learn how to cope with their emotions during this COVID pandemic. I would say before this, I was spending maybe 45, 50% of my time talking about emotions and stressful situations with people. It's definitely increased. So I use something that I think other people might be aware that there's all these different acronyms out there to help people that they can use to figure out what they're feeling. And one of them is RAIN. I don't know if either one of you have heard of that or anyone on the call has heard of RAIN, but it's basically recognizing, allowing, investigating, and then nurturing yourself through your emotions. So that's one method, but the one that I'm really focused on working with people comes out of Yale, and it's called the ruler method. And the word ruler, as every letter, it's an acronym, represents a step in dealing with our emotions and managing them and regulating them. And the first part of RUL, which is RUL, is all about helping people figure out what they're actually feeling. So the R stands for recognizing our emotions and ourselves, or maybe if it's an emotion in someone else, being able to recognize someone else's emotions. Typically, we're going to be able to recognize emotions through observing our own behavior, maybe our vocal tone changes, maybe our facial expression or the muscles in our body tense up, or behaviors change. Think about in other people, think about like an angry boss. He walks down, the aisle of the office, of the cubicles in the offices, and he's got his arms crossed, his hands clenched, and a frown on his face. I'm going to recognize that as somebody who's not approachable, right? That's someone I'm maybe a little bit more uncomfortable and fearful of. So R stands for recognize in the ruler method. And then U and L, they're more cognitive in the process. They're helping people understand the causes and consequences of their emotions and then labeling those emotions and the nuances within them. So most people, when you ask them how they're feeling, if they take you seriously, might say sad, glad, or mad, right? But emotions are so much deeper than that. And being able to label emotions, and for me, I find out how to delve deeper by continuing to ask people why they're afraid or why something might be causing them stress. So an example around the COVID situation could be someone's talking to me about how they're afraid of contracting the virus. And I might ask them, well, let me better understand this. Let's look at what's behind the fear. Why are you afraid of contracting COVID? And maybe their answer is something like, well, if I get the virus, then I won't be able to work. Well, why would not working be something that would be bad for you to have happen? Well, then I can't afford to take care of my family. And then why would, what would be the problem with not taking care of your family? Well, then my family would, starve and I could lose my home. So working through and delving deeper under understanding and labeling those emotions is really important. But then the end of ruler is the E and the R, which Sal went into lots of great ways with the R, which is regulating, but the E stands for expressing our feelings. So E and R really represent what to do with those feelings in the ruler method. So the E is expressing our feelings, but oftentimes, I think we don't express our feelings because, for me personally, I don't want to bother people that seem very, very busy. And so oftentimes I don't express what I'm feeling because I don't want to bother people, or I don't know if anyone would care. Or, so expressing them, the individual or ourselves have to feel completely safe and comfortable with who we're expressing them to, whether it's a therapist, a role model, or a teacher, or a coworker, a family member. Expressing our feelings is critical. And we want someone who's not judgmental and someone who does care about us and will listen to us. And then regulating it goes back to a lot of the techniques. And to me, regulating our emotions is going to be a personal experience. If you're introverted, you may be better off trying to do meditation and going on walks in a park or in a natural area. And if you're extroverted, you may want to go to a large yoga class or something to help you deal with your emotions and feelings. So that's really a personal choice based off of our personality, I think, and how we're really going to gravitate toward different ways of regulating our emotions and transforming them into either things we want to enhance or transforming them by letting them go if they don't serve us.
Nice. So Amber, tell me, this Yale course, is this the happiness course that Yale offers that we have posted on the Going on Offense you referred to?
It's not. This is not a course. It's a method that comes out of the University of Emotional Intelligence.
Did you hear my question? We have a slow network connection. Hopefully that'll bring back. Are you back now?
I'm back. Can you guys hear me? Sal, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you. I can see you, but
Can you hear me, Amber?
Oh, there we go.
Now we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We lost you there for a
You
second.
can. Let's turn our cameras off because we seem to be having some slow network connection. And I think if we turn off the cameras, we'll have a little bit better connection.
Okay.
So, Amber, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I asked, and I didn't know if you answered this already, and I just couldn't hear you, but when you refer to the Yale course, is that the Yale course that they're offering free right now, the happiness course?
No, it's not. This is for the Center of Emotional Intelligence that is a bunch of Yale professors and psychologists and research scientists that put this method together in the early 90s to help people navigate their feelings. And it's actually used very commonly in schools to help build social emotional learning techniques for young people and inside of corporations.
Gotcha. Nice. I'm going to ask the audience that if they have any questions or if they have any suggestions or ideas of what they do to control their emotions or how they share their emotions, to either send us through the questions feature on the control box, comments or questions for the panel, or to raise your hand and we'll turn on your microphone and you can join the conversation. Sal, while we're doing that, tell me in your mind, what are some of the greatest barriers that we each experience in recognizing our own feelings?
Some of the greatest barriers is probably the ability to go deeper within and trying to explore these emotions, these feelings. And I think right now this might be an opportune time, since we are all spending more time at home and we are not socializing as much with other people, just to go see, in our deep down inside, what are these things that are holding us back, and just asking, what am I feeling right now? What emotions are coming up right now, and what's standing in the way for me to go ahead and pursue. And as mentioned by Amber, when we feel someone that says, well, I'm fearful that I get sick, but what does it really translate to? What does it mean? Does it really mean that you are fearing as a true fear, as it described by definitions of being in the danger, immediate danger, or is this more of an anxiety, or is this more of a way of projecting what might happen into the future, which is not a true fear because we are not being present right now with this threat. I mean, it's different when we are fearing of what the next step is going to be, especially from this pandemic, versus because I wouldn't even define that as a fear. I would be more of anxious feeling or concern versus a fear of right now being chased by a tiger or someone having a gun putting to my head. So I think first of all, I would like to separate the definitions and then see if these are truly some barriers that we are creating, or this is something that we can work because it's not a true fear per se, and it's more of a different feeling of anxiety or grief or something that it's deeper down inside of us that we haven't really dealt with it yet.
Nice. And you had recommended a few days ago that people consider creating a blog, a feelings blog. And we actually put that as an idea on our website as we've posted many suggestions and ideas. We did that. give me your thoughts. Tell us a little bit more about a feeling blog and the value of feeling blog or feeling blog.
Yeah, so this idea was something that I had actually been talking to one of my health coaching clients about, that she was interested in creating a blog for people to come to and share their feelings and emotions around what was going on in our lives today. And I felt like it was definitely something I wanted to support her on. So I've been just slowly working on her developing this place for her community and people. Obviously, it'll be global, so it could be accessed by anybody, but that's really how that idea initially started. And I also just thought that it would be great to eventually have active for students too in school, and helping them cope and deal with their emotions and promote them recognizing and being open and sharing about their feelings and emotions.
Sal, what are your thoughts about this idea of a feelings blog?
The feelings blogs, I think it's a great, I didn't hear the whole question, so I apologize because I think I lost probably 70% of what you were saying, but I'm gonna think about the feeling blogs that you had mentioned and that Amber had mentioned it. I think anytime that we have a blog or a journal or something that we can, in a way, externalize this feeling, put them into a place where now we, number one, we can see them outside of our body. We can actually put a rating on it. And number two, I think the other thing that happens when we do that, it kind of liberates us from some of these feelings that were within us. So what I do, and we don't have our camera on it, otherwise I would have shown you, but this is a very simple, so you'll have to use a little bit of your imagination. I get a piece of paper, I draw a line vertically between the middle, and on one side, I put a happy sunshine face. On the other side, I put a cloudy, stormy image. So, and what I do personally is I label and I put in whatever my feelings are on you know, on that at that moment. I categorize under something happy or not so happy, and at the same time, even people that I like to spend more time with it, the ones that I find that bring sunshine into my life versus the ones that bring, you know, rainy clouds and thunderstorms. So I think the blog is a good way for us, number one, to externalize what we're feeling, and number two, also to put it out there because there are other people that might be feeling the same thing at the same time, so they see that we're truly not alone, especially during this time of feeling the way we are feeling. So, and maybe converting some of those or paying attention to some of those and see what it will give us more ways to be happy, you know, such as gratitude and love, compassion, empathy, and all this other good practice.
Nice. Very good. So I don't know, Amber, can you hear us? Are you back with us?
I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. We can. What I'd like to do as we wrap things up today is give each of you just a minute or two to share any final thoughts around what we can do after we've identified our or become aware of our feelings or other feelings. And I would want to let everyone know that based on Amber's suggestion, we've actually put a new page on the website that's a feelings blog. And would invite anyone that might be interested in sharing their feelings through that medium, you're welcome to do so. So Amber, what are some of your final thoughts about what we should do once we do recognize and we're aware of our feelings?
Well, I kind of would say that labeling them is really important. And then really being able to find someone that they can trust who's actually curious to help you delve deeper into understanding them and what's behind our emotions and our feelings, and intervening before we react. I also think it's once we recognize them, that's really to me the most important. It is the first step, but it's really the first step in being able to be better at regulating them. So not masking them. I think our society has trained us very well not to really share and not emphasized emotion as being as important in what we perceive as being successful as we grow and change and become an adult. And so people shouldn't feel that they're going to look vulnerable or weak um, if they have an interest in really delving deeper into being able to have more emotional control and being able to express those feelings. And I guess finally, the takeaway for me would just be to remind people that once you recognize them, remember there is that space between the stimulus or the impulse that you feel and your response. And that is really where we have power and freedom to make different choices. In a response is where our growth really lies and where our freedom lies. So, we change the future by changing and choosing different response. So thank you for having me. I'm sorry I lost connection with you guys.
Oh, no problem. Sal, final thoughts, 1 or 2 minutes to wrap things up.
So the first thing, as was mentioned by Amber as well, is to recognize them. Recognize what are these feelings, and at the same time, I mentioned briefly before, recognizing if this is a truly your feeling or you're just being a mirror of somebody else's feeling, because that too is going to matter a lot on how we deal with it. And also being able to accept these feelings and work with them, because if they are truly yours, then let's go deeper in and accepting, because there is no benefit by just ignore them. There is no benefit just by thinking that everything is fine and we should have a positive mind, because during stressful time, trying to have a positive mind is not so easy, and it can be even more stressful because the times are what they are, and you can't change what's out there. So, but what you can do is once you recognize him and once you go deep inside, you can actually quiet your mind and quiet that internal dialogue that goes on throughout the day, throughout our life. And so, because I think that's really where we find the healing itself, it's into the quiet mind. So at the same time, expressing out there, yes, it may make us more vulnerable, as it was mentioned also by Amber, but having someone who you can trust, someone in your tribe that is there for you, that shows up for you, helps you carrying the load, so you don't feel that you're doing this all by yourself and you're all alone in the world. And that's such a gigantic relief when we know that we are not doing this all by ourselves. There are other people out there that are willing, honestly willing to help us, to share with us their thoughts, their feelings, their fear, and they can provide more kindness into our life. And I think that's one thing that if we are all into it, whether it's your feeling blog or something else that you share with your close friends, with your clients, if we can provide more kindness, that also gives us more resilience. It also makes us stronger and better to come out from especially right now, from this pandemic that we are going on. So we can make that the positive pandemic virus, and concentrate more on that rather than the stressful experience.
Very nice. Thank you very much, both of you. I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
comments. Go ahead and conclude the huddle today. I'd like to just mention that this Wednesday, April 22nd, we'll have Dr. Burl Randolph Jr. as our guest panelist. He's a doctor of management and organizational leadership. He is a retired colonel of the U.S. Army and served his country for nearly 32 years. He is the CEO of My Wingman and is a best-selling author and leader coach. Immediately following the huddle today, you'll receive an email survey asking for your feedback on today's huddle. We encourage you to complete it to give us feedback on how we can make these more effective. Also, please send us your ideas and suggestions for themes for future huddles, as well as suggestions and ideas of how we can battle the emotional impact of the virus. Again, if you'd like to be a guest to provide or if you know somebody you would like to recommend, we'd love to hear from you. To communicate with us, simply use the contact us form on the website goingonoffense.com. I thank today's participants, and specifically our guest panelists, Amber and Sal. We also want to thank the organizations who've gotten behind this effort and are supporting it. Please check out the wonderful offers of help on our help page. And we also want to let you know that we will be posting the recording of this huddle on the website later today. Now, to wrap up the huddle, I'm going to play a video of some ladies who went on the offense and contributed to their community. We'll now and say goodbye and hope you all join us for another upcoming huddle. We hold them every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time.